Hello, my name's Alex Ryan and I'm a tech steward. I work at the Mars Discovery District, and today I'd like to talk to you about the take responsibility tech stewardship behaviour. A few years ago, my team worked on a project with the City of Toronto to help regulate the sharing economy. So working to make sure that Uber and Airbnb had modernised regulations to support their operation. Previously, they were operating in a grey zone where the old taxi and accommodation regulations didn't really apply. So we recognised that these emerging business models and technologies were creating a lot of unintended consequences, and we needed to make sure that they were managed in a responsible way. The Mowat Centre had said that the government's current approach to these platforms was really a whack-a-mole approach, and we wanted to get beyond that and take more of a systems lens. So in order to do that, we did the first journey mapping of the regulatory approval process for an Uber versus an Airbnb driver. We did jurisdictional scans to understand what kind of regulations governments globally were taking into account. And then we created a really innovative policy prototyping dashboard. It was like a series of knobs and dials, levers that you could turn and to set the different parameters in the regulations. And we use this as a very interactive and easy tool for stakeholder engagement, which we then took out to policymakers, stakeholders, and citizens to get their input on where the right balance of regulations would be that could meet the citizen need, which was for choice. They wanted choice. Also to drive innovation and reduce administrative burden. And so by having this dashboard approach, the participants were able to test different parameter settings, different regulatory rules, and understand both the intended and unintended consequences of those better, which allowed us to come to consensus around what were the right settings for Toronto. And these were then implemented in the city for vehicle for hire bylaw, as well as the short-term accommodations bylaw.
Hello, my name is Rogayeh Tabrizi. I'm the CEO and founder of Theory+Practice, and I'm a tech steward. Reflecting on taking responsibility, I am reminded of our second year in business. At that point, we got a very interesting inbound offer from a company that was focused on building a platform that would enable student athletes. What they asked us to do was use publicly available data such as social media, demographics, school information, and build them an engine that would predict a perhaps aggressive or addictive behavior among students. It was a very interesting question, and I appreciated the complexity of this problem, but also the fact that it can have a very positive impact of the life of students. However, during the negotiations, the entire time I had a very unsettling feeling. And when I reflected more on it, I realized that I'm actually not quite sure our stakeholders have the in-house expertise and knowledge to truly assess the risks with this kind of a powerful engine, especially if it is not used properly. The impact that it can have, it can be devastating on the same people that it's trying to help. And the more I thought about it, the more I was sure that this is not necessarily the right project for us to do. So we decided to not work on this project. And just so you know that it was such a big project for us early on in our business, the budget of the project was north of $500,000. So the reason I'm sharing this story with you guys is because it is really never just about having an interesting project to work on, or even the budget or what it could have done for our business at that point. But the fact that we have to be able to manage and anticipate the risk and the impact that technology can have through this entire life cycle. So it is really important to be very responsible with the technology that we are creating. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Franz and I'm a tech steward. I'd like to tell a story about taking responsibility. So we often think about the responsibility we take on as engineers, as future engineers, in terms of the technical work we do. What's actually really important is to think about the ways in which the things that we maybe choose not to make decisions about can actually have huge technical and societal implications. So I'm a space engineer, and one of the things I've done over my career is put a number of spacecraft into orbit. And in doing that, one of the things that I've had a responsibility to do as a flight dynamicist is think about what's the right launch that we get put on. Now, when choosing a launch, an engineering task is typically focused on which orbit do we want, how are we going to get the best coverage of the Earth, how are we going to ensure that we can get good ground station contact to get our data down. The things that we generally leave to other people to answer are the questions around the politics of which country should we launch from, or the politics around what are the challenges that we might have culturally with different countries. Now, the reality is when we're dealing with launch, there aren't that many countries currently who have a launch capability. In Canada, we are thinking about developing a new launch capability, but at the minute we are very much reliant on other countries. And so some of those countries are not always friendly with Canada. And what that can result in is our need to actually change our launch option fairly late in the launch preparation activity. Now, a launch vehicle, once it's ready for launch, can't just immediately take off a payload. That will cause a problem for all the other vehicles on that launch vehicle. And so if we pull out of a launch very late because of a political issue, we're actually required to provide a mass dummy, a lump of metal that will go on the launch in place of us, that will be kicked off in orbit at the place where we would have been kicked off, and will stay up there for hundreds or thousands of years. So by choosing to launch on a launch capability that maybe is timely, maybe is cost effective, but could have some political concerns or constraints, we're actually creating a situation where down the line, we might actually be adding to a significant technological risk for a number of other space missions. Putting a mass dummy into orbit that we can't control is something that will result in space debris being out there for many hundreds or thousands of years that we can't control, that will cause a danger to other missions, that could jeopardize the capabilities that we on Earth are reliant upon for our weather, for our communications. And so when we're thinking about doing the work of taking responsibility for decisions, we need to be open to and aware of the decisions that maybe we're not used to taking, being aware that there could be a political or a social dimension to a choice that we make, and recognizing the unintended consequences of ignoring those aspects could actually have huge technological and societal impacts. And so broadening our understanding when we're taking responsibility, taking the responsibility to check with others who understand those other aspects, is something that we as future engineers, as engineers who are thinking about tech stewardship, need to take up.